The story kicks off with our protagonist realizing he's been transmigrated as a generic side character. He spent 9 years training like crazy and finally had a major breakthrough in his power. But then, he accidentally discovers that someone else was way more incredible and stole all the spotlight. And just like that, our boy is left completely speechless. At that moment, he and the others fall into despair, wondering what kind of unfair world this is. Right then, the system pops up, saying the worldview data was wrong and it was time for a reset. The protagonist collapses to the ground and starts crying over his 9 years of wasted effort. But he stops and thinks, wait, this is the start of a cliché novel, so my talent must be insane. The scene cuts to the spirit root testing ceremony, where his talent was about to be measured. However, the results come in, and to the guy's surprise, he doesn't have a spirit root at all. He then starts lamenting that this transmigration was nothing like the ones in the novels. While he's wallowing in self-pity, an old man approaches him and asks if he'd like to cultivate. Our boy gets excited by the question, thinking this could be the long-awaited hack he's been dreaming of. The scene cuts to the old man's sect, called the Qingyun Dao sect, and inside is the sect master, Taoist Taihua, who says he has a task for his disciple. The master then starts desperately begging his disciple to help him out, just this once. This is Su Chengju, the eldest disciple, and he asks what kind of important event a tiny sect like theirs could possibly have. The old man explains that a new policy might shut down their sect if they don't recruit 8 disciples. But he adds that recruiting is extremely difficult, and all the sects are desperate for new members. Some are even using pretty shameless tactics to lure new disciples to their side. They're offering all sorts of things, shamelessly trying to convince young people to join them. But the master managed to find one sucker named Ye Ping, also known as our protagonist, who has absolutely no talent. He's a kid who doesn't care about money and will do anything as long as they teach him how to cultivate. The master tells Chengju that the boy is very naive, but he's afraid the new disciple might run off. So, the plan is to pretend to be a sage and make up some techniques to trick the newbie for a while. The eldest disciple is disappointed, realizing he just has to act and it's not something serious. Chengju asks his master if he knows the nickname others have given him, and with a serious face, he starts bragging, saying he's known as the king of pretension, showing off all his grandeur. Chengju says that when it comes to looking cool, no one in all of Qingzhou can beat him. After that, he starts boasting that the master found the right person, while Taihua wonders if that's really something to be proud of. The master then says that no matter what, Chengju needs to keep the newbie in the sect for a year. However, the young man refuses, saying he doesn't need that much time to fool the kid. He boasts that a year is way too long, and for a rookie like that, a little effort is all it takes. The young man guarantees he'll make the newbie love the sect so much that he'll want to come back in his next life. At this, the master starts praising the king of pretension for already getting into character. Chengju is so confident that he promises to swallow his own sword with sauce if he fails the mission. He then says he's heading to the mountain, and the master offers him a ride on his flying sword. But the eldest disciple refuses the help, saying it's not necessary. He turns around and says he's no longer a beginner who needs help getting around. With that, the young man raises his hand. The master is perplexed, as he seems to recognize that gesture from somewhere. With a dead serious face, Chengju says that this prosperous era is everything he has ever wished for. Suddenly, he raises his finger, and a powerful purple aura erupts as he calls for his sword. The old man is stunned. He never expected his useless disciple to be able to fly on a sword. Chengju looks at his master with a very smug expression. Despite all the posing, nothing happened. The master is then disappointed, starting to think he's been had. The young man admits it was all for show, and that he still needs a ride to the mountain. The scene cuts to later, on the mountain peak, where everything is ready for the show. Up there, Chengju is shivering from the cold, even while wearing a cloak that's supposed to be resistant to low temperatures. He even sneezes and complains that he only chose this spot to set the mood, but now he's freezing. But suddenly, he senses Ye Ping approaching, and his expression changes completely. Immediately, the king of pretension gets ready to begin his grand performance. Meanwhile, our protagonist is struggling up the mountain, thinking about how incredible immortals are. The boy looks up, amazed by the sight of his new senior. He sees Changju standing majestically against the full moon, creating an epic scene. The eldest disciple puts on a serious and mysterious face, getting completely into his wise sage character. Then, Yiping finally reaches the top and stares at the imposing figure of his senior. To impress him even more, Changju makes his sword float towards his hand as it glows, wrapped in a blue aura. Yiping is dumbfounded and wonders if his new senior is a sword immortal. But he starts to suspect something, thinking that a sect that would accept him must be terrible. So why are the disciples so impressive and seem so strong? The boy then has an epiphany and seems to have figured it all out. He imagines that the sect is actually a supreme hidden place, concealed from the world. Our protagonist gets excited, thinking everyone there is powerful and can help him. He then starts putting the pieces together, remembering what happened earlier that day. The young man recalls the ruined state of the sect when he first arrived. He didn't realize it at the time, but that was strange for a cultivation sect. But even though it was in ruins, every corner of the place was impeccably clean. Yiping thinks it's all too perfect to be just a coincidence. But if it's all done to hide from the world, then everything makes perfect sense. Our boy then declares that 3 million immortals bow before his senior brother. Changju is surprised and thinks to himself that the kid's got a talent for boasting. He then decides he needs to respond to the compliment in an equally impressive way, and says he will bestow a blessing of luck, releasing a powerful aura from his body. This blue energy then completely envelops our protagonist's body. Yiping is totally blown away, not understanding what was happening. The eldest disciple explains that this breeze is a mystical art that improves one's aptitude for cultivation. Yiping is impressed, since a normal sect could never do something like that. The boy bows and thanks Changju, while the king of pretension feels a pain in his arm. The eldest disciple holds back a laugh, thinking that it was just an ordinary breeze. Then he sits down and says that before teaching the way of the sword, he has a question for the boy. Our protagonist gets excited because this is just like in the novels before learning a secret technique. The eldest disciple asks what the rookie thinks the ultimate form of the sword is. Changju brags internally, thinking that no matter the answer, he'll come out looking smarter. Our protagonist takes the question very seriously and starts thinking of a good answer. To him, even the way the question was asked seemed perfect and full of meaning. The young man is sure his senior is a hidden sage and that he needs to answer carefully. He thinks a common answer would be too shallow for such a profound question. A full hour passes, and our protagonist is still thinking about an answer to the question. At this point, Changju complains that he's going to freeze to death on the mountaintop and tells the boy to just answer already. Yiping finally says that the ultimate form of the sword is a blade of grass that cuts the sun, the moon, and the stars. The eldest disciple is completely shocked by his new apprentice's unexpected answer. He keeps repeating the phrase in his head about a blade of grass that can cut the heavens. Changju imagines the power of this technique and thinks he's never heard of anything so grand in his entire life. The guy is stunned. The strongest person he's ever known only managed to split a mountain. Our protagonist then timidly asks if that was a bit of an exaggeration on his part. The king of pretension is amazed by the iconic line and decides to steal it for himself. So, he tells the newbie that it was indeed an exaggeration, and that the path of cultivation must be steady and humble. Since the boy seems to understand, Changju prepares to teach him an important lesson. He then unsheaths his sword and makes an impressive slash with his purple energy. With that, a sword mark appears on the ground, and he says he'll leave it for the newbie. Changju explains that it contains the strongest sword intent and that the boy must study it. Yiping gets super excited because now he's certain he's joined a secret, legendary sect. The king of pretension then runs off to find his second brother and show off a bit. On the way, he runs into a girl who calls him senior brother. The young woman then asks what he thought of the new recruit's talent. She stares at him with a curious look, waiting for an answer. Changju scolds her for snooping, but she says she was just curious. He then gets a brilliant idea and decides to test his new line on her. The young man changes the subject and prepares to ask an important question. With a serious face, he asks if she knows how powerful the ultimate form of the sword is. The girl is confused and doesn't understand what that has to do with her. He then reveals that the ultimate form of the sword is using a blade of grass to cut down the heavens. The young woman is completely blown away by her senior brother's words. She praises his art of pretension, and Changju strikes a pose, confirming he's gotten better. After that, the young woman asks him to answer the question she asked before. The girl wants to know how long he thinks it will take the newbie to comprehend the sword intent. Changju then admits he doesn't know, since not even he can comprehend it. The girl is shocked by his answer and wonders if her senior brother is messing with her. 2 hours later, the scene returns to the mountain peak where our protagonist was. The protagonist is seriously analyzing the sword mark his senior left on the ground. He starts to have doubts, thinking it's just a common crack in the ground and that he's been tricked. But he quickly scolds himself for thinking that, since everything has proven that his senior is a great sage, he convinces himself that he just needs to try harder to understand the sword intent. Ye Ping fills with determination to keep trying without giving up. He motivates himself to continue his analysis, not giving up on his great goal. At that moment, he sees the silhouette of a powerful swordsman reflected in his eye. Then, the figure of a swordsman, shrouded in a blue aura, appears in his mind. The figure holds a long sword and begins to demonstrate various swordsmanship moves. The swordsman then executes a series of extremely powerful sword techniques. For Yi Ping, it's as if a great bell is ringing in his ears. The 4 sword methods with 12 movements each become clearer and clearer in his mind. After seeing everything, he unsheaths his sword as if he's been practicing for years. The protagonist begins to repeat the sword movements that appeared in his mind over and over. He practices the sequence once, and then immediately repeats it a second time. And then a third time, he continues his movements perfectly, without tiring. With each repetition, his strikes become faster and much more precise. Yiping masters the initial 12 movements and even learns 15 new strikes. In no time, our protagonist can already execute 20 different sword movements. For him, all this information is more frightening than having teachings forced into his mind. The young man sits there, not quite understanding how it all happened so quickly. He then realizes the only explanation is that it was all thanks to his senior brother. Our boy can't believe that a simple breeze could have boosted his talents so absurdly. At this, he cries tears of joy and deeply regrets ever doubting his senior. Yeping calms down and refocuses on the sword mark to learn even more. 7 days pass, and the scene cuts to the eldest disciple's residence. Inside, we see Su Changyu's treasure box of pretension filled with accessories. Then, our king of pretension starts getting ready to meet the sect's new disciple. With his robes fluttering in the wind, he was finally ready to go. He then comments that it's a great day to begin his grand performance. With an air of superiority, he heads out to find his new disciple and check on his progress.